Watch me retouch one of my vacation photos live in real time so that you can do this too, even if you are a beginner at Photoshop. Now, the first thing I want to do is my local adjustment. So I'm going to work on my face first, which means I am going to go to the bottom left-hand corner and zoom in a little bit so that I can see my face a little bit easier. I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, which looks like a little stamper, and I'm going to change my opacity up on the top toolbar from 100% down to 28% opacity. This is going to pick up the skin where I click and drop it where I'm going to drag the rest of the skin. So I'm going to use the Option key on my Mac. I'm just going to hold down the part of the skin that I want to pick up. This is going to be a normal skin color, and then I'm going to look at those shadows under my eyes, and I'm just going to slowly swipe under that, not to remove anything other than those shadows. And so on the 28% opacity, it's just going to lighten and brighten that a little bit. And you can kind of see I'm picking up different placements of that skin so that it's not incredibly cloned as I am doing this. So you can see we still have the lines under my skin, but it is going to remove some of those dark shadows. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to grab my spot heal tool. It looks like a little bit of a band-aid with a little dot arc over it. And I'm just going to make sure that I am then just retouching just a tiny bit where I need to. You can kind of see on my eyeball, on my left eyeball, I have a vein that's very clearly noticeable there. I'm just going to come in with that. I'm going to retouch that just a little bit. And you may not get it right the first time, so you might have to just go in a little bit closer if you want to, or you can pull up your clone tool and you can make that a little bit lighter as well. Sometimes you will be using a tool that it just doesn't work the way that you need it to, and you'll have to try something else. So you can kind of see how that didn't really work. I'm actually going to grab the white from the other eye, and I am just going to very gently paint over that. Actually, that didn't work quite the way that I had anticipated. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab that spot heal tool just one more time, and I'm just going to hit that. And because it still has a slight coloration to it, I'm going to use my dodge tool. So dodge looks like a little circle with a line out of it. I'm going to grab that. I'm just going to tap that right on the eye. That's going to brighten it just a little bit. So then I'm going to go through, I'm going to grab my spot heal tool. I'm going to retouch anything that I do not like on the rest of my face, and that's just to move anything that is not what is normally there. I'm going to go down to my chest where I clearly got a little sunburn, and I'm going to retouch just a little bit here. Anything that's not naturally there is what I'm going to be tweaking. And I'm going to grab my spot or my clone tool, and then I'm going to make it a slightly larger brush size, holding down my Option key again. I'm just going to take that skin and paint over the rest of the skin just to kind of fix that coloring a little bit, because I clearly got some sun while I was out. So if you ever have to fix a sunburn, there's a couple of different ways to do that. One of the easiest ways is just to grab your clone tool and on 28% opacity, grab the skin that is not quite so dark. And this works for shadows as well. Sometimes you're going to get weird shadows that you need to fix just a little bit. I'm going to talk about taking away some of that redness in a moment, but you can kind of see how it's evening out the skin tone just a little bit more so that it's not quite so sunburned like, and we make sure that we are good with that. So now I'm going to back right on off, and you can kind of see how I've fixed that up just a little bit. Now this is going to be a really good opportunity for us to go and look at some of those stray hairs. So let me go ahead and move in just a little bit again. You can kind of see how I've got some flyaways here. Now I could leave them, I could fix some of them, I could fix all of them. I'm just going to show you a little bit of how I do this because I actually don't mind too much of this. So I'm going to take my clone tool, or my spot heal tool, my spot heal tool. And I'm just very gently in sections, not the entire hair. I'm just going to go over some of those flyaway hairs that I don't like, because it will, if you do too much at once, it will kind of truncate your hair and make it look like it's weird and cut off. And we don't want to do that. So we're just going to go in. We could go and do the entire thing here, and it may work and it may not. You can kind of see how it has some weird stuff there. So if you ever do something that you need to reverse, you're just going to hit Command Z, and it's going to fix those things for you. So this may be a great case where we're actually going to use that clone tool, and on 28% opacity, we're just going to grab the surrounding areas and just lighten that up a little bit. So maybe we don't want to remove it all together, but we do want to lighten it, make it blend in with our background just a little bit more so that it's not quite so noticeable. You will have to pick up different selections to actually use this properly, but you can kind of see how now all of a sudden that has gone way, way down. We see the difference there. Now I'm looking at my eyes and they still look a little bit on the blue side. That's something that just happens with my eyes a lot. It may not happen to you, but I'm going to grab that dodge tool one more time and I'm just going to swipe over it just a little bit more. And the nice thing is, and we have tutorials on this too, you can actually use it to brighten your eyes as well, but you're going to want to go and watch those tutorials for that. So now moving away from that, we're going to do our overall adjustments. We handled a lot of our local adjustments. We're going to tweak the coloring of the background and the vibrancy of it. Then we're going to take care of some of that red or that pink that's being cast onto my face because of the arch over me. So first things first, we're going to go into our brightness and contrast panel down at the bottom. It's that little half circle. It's half dark, half light. And you're on the drop down, you're going to pick brightness and contrast. I'm going to move my contrast up, and you can kind of see how that's changing it one way or the other. You don't want to go too intense. It doesn't need to look like an Instagram filter. Ugh, we don't want that. But we do want to bump it up just a little bit. Now you can play with your contrast if you want. You can also play with your brightness, but we don't want to do too terribly much. So I'm actually going to leave that at 0. I bumped my contrast up to around 18. It's going to be different for you. Do not try to copy the same numbers as I have, because your photo is lit differently than mine, and therefore your numbers are also going to be different than mine. But you can kind of see how you're going to slide it to the right or to the left to bump it up to the positive side or down to the negative side. So I've kind of played with that a little bit. I may actually want to come in and darken up, let's say, the sky. So I'm just going to grab my lasso tool, and I am just going to, up at that top corner, select a section that I want to darken up. So I'm going to go down to that little half circle again, and I'm going to click on my brightness and contrast panel. I'm actually just going to bring down my darkness pretty far and then bring up the contrast just a little bit. Typically, if you're doing things down on the brightness side, you're going to want to bump the contrast up just a little bit so that it doesn't become a lifeless color. So now that I've got that piece there, you can kind of see on and off how that's going to change it. I'm going to grab my brush on the layer mask on 100% soft round brush. I'm just going to paint over certain sections, and you can kind of see how now it makes some pieces of this dark, and I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to remove some of that. So I'm actually going to lower my opacity because I don't want to take it all away. I'm going to lower it down to somewhere in the 20s or 30s, depending on whatever you want. And I'm just going to, you can kind of see at the end of the tunnel here, I'm just painting it off of just part of that tunnel because I don't want the entire thing in those shadows, but I wanted to more clearly define the pillars, the trees, and the sky behind it. Now I could, if I wanted, actually toggle that to a white brush instead of the black brush. Remember, white adds, black takes away. And I'm just going to gently, again on, I think it's 36% opacity right now, I'm just going to paint that coloring right over the floor. And that should make it pop a little bit too. So we can kind of see turning this on and off, how we've darkened this down and we've made it pop just a little bit more. But we need to adjust the coloring on my face. So there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to show you one of the easy ways if you're a beginner, and if you are more advanced, this is not going to be the way that you use. There are lots of other ways that you can be doing this that are going to work better for skin retouching. But if you are just an influencer taking photos and putting them out there, you're not going to need to know the extremely advanced ways of doing this. If you are somebody who's a professional retoucher, you're not going to do it this way. So we are going to zoom in just a little bit. I don't want to go too terribly far on this one because I do want to see kind of the overall coloring. And I'm just going to grab a section of my face. I don't even need to do the entire face here. And I am going to go into my panels, and I'm going to go down to that little circle, the half circle again. And this time I'm going to go all the way down to selective color. Again, this is not the way that you're doing it if you're a professional retoucher, but if you're just an influencer and you're just learning, this is one of the easiest ways to do it. And you can grow from there. And if you want those tutorials, do let me know. So now I am inside of my selective color panel. It usually automatically defaults to red, but you can kind of see how you can pick all of the different colors. There's red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, whites, neutrals, and blacks. I am going to stay on reds because that is the overall color I want to adjust. But when I start to do that, you may see me go in and change some of those colorings. So now, as I'm identifying which colors I need to be doing here, I'm looking at it's extremely red, extremely pink on my face. Now, natural human skin tones are yellows and reds and pinks. Those are all normal colors. Sometimes we just get a little too much of one of those pigments. And so we're just going to pull it back just a little bit and balance it out for more of a neutral skin color. So I am going to actually, inside of the red panel, you can see there's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I'm going to start with the magenta because that tends to be the color that I'm going to need to take away the most. So you can kind of see how it's, if you go dramatic, it's going to take it down to the greens or it's going to go up to the pinks. I just need to bring it down somewhat. So you can always, or you can as I'm doing this, you can start to see how it went from that bright red to that almost yellow color. So now I'm going to take my brush, my soft round brush, 100% opacity on, oh, it's on 36. Let me bump it back up to 100% opacity on a white soft brush. And I'm just going to paint. You can either swipe or better yet, you can tap where you want it to change the coloring. I'm on my neck right now and on my chest. You can kind of see how some of that got a little too yellow, but it is removing the reds. And so that is a good thing. That's what we want. We do want to avoid the lips and the gums, but you're going to want to get the rest of that. And you're going to be careful around your hair as well. So you may have to have a smaller brush size to get in along that hairline so that you do not remove any coloring in your hair, depending on what color your hair is. I have some red tones in my hair, and so I have to be careful around that. And this could potentially be too yellow for me. Let me just tap this on and off to show you the difference that we've just made. So we go from a more neutral skin tone to that pinky hue where I clearly look sunburned and clearly in that color cast of the pink arches that I'm under. So I'm going to add that back in. The question is this too yellow? So the first thing I'm going to do is pull back to check on that. And we're going to see, is this now too yellow? There's two ways to handle this. The first is that I can take the opacity down. So if I look over at my toolbar, you're going to see where the selected color is. I'm just going to take that opacity. I'm going to back that down just a little bit. And you can kind of see up and down. I can find somewhere in the middle. On 100%, it may be a little on the yellow side. So I could bring it down and add a little bit of that red back in to kind of balance it out. That's actually not bad there. Now I'm going to duplicate that because I kind of like where it is. And then I'm going to remove that opacity from there so it does look a little more yellow. Then I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to select part of my skin here, and I'm going to go down into that half circle all the way down to selected color. And then instead of red, I'm going to switch over to the yellow. Or if I wanted to stay in the same panel, I could have just on the reds channel, I could have dragged down the yellow. So you can see how it's taking it purple and it's taking it yellow now. So you can do all of this within one color, or you can use the different colors within the spectrum. It really just depends on what you're trying to do. So let me zoom this in just a little bit so we can see just a little bit clearer as we are kind of distinguishing what we're doing here. And so we're going to move this back to 0. And I'm going to take this yellow down just a touch. You can kind of see how it's now neutralized that color a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to paint that back in on that white brush, 100% opacity, to give me a nice clear skin tone. And this works on all skin colors, all skin tones. You just have to select the colors that are from your skin tone. So do you want it brighter? Do you want it more golden? Do you want it, lighter? Do you want it darker? Whatever you want. If you want to sway it to warm tones or more of those tungsten-y tones, you can do all of those things. So I actually left it on the red channel for this, and you can kind of see on, off, that's on. I kind of change those colors. Or I can go in, I can select that skin one more time, and I can change my color to yellow from red. And from there, then I can pull on the magentas again. I can pull on the yellows again, and you can kind of see how that's going to change some of it, but not all of it, because it was mostly based inside of what we were doing with, you can kind of see what I've got going on there. You can see how that mostly lays within the reds channel there. So let me pull back here. There we go. Now we have the option of putting that right in there. And let's see. Turning this on and off, you can see how it's more of a yellow tone, and that's more of like a white tone. It's actually a little bit more than I want. So I'm going to back that opacity up just a little bit. There we go. So now I have the opportunity to go through and check and see, what do I still need to do? Where do I still need to tweak? And I'm probably going to go down to a brightness and contrast panel one more time. I'm going to bump up my contrast just a touch. And maybe bring the brightness down just a little bit. Now you can play with your hair. You can play with your shadows. You can play with all the things. We can make our hair shiny. We've had a tutorial on how to do that before. Let me just real quick add in a new layer, and I'm going to use this on gray down to soft light and fill with that neutral light. And I've got a full tutorial on how to do that here on the channel, so you can check that out. And I'm just going to make my hair just a little bit shinier. So I'm using my Dodge tool, and I'm just kind of going over where those highlights are on my hair. And I could really go all out with this. I'm not going to do it in this tutorial, but you can kind of see what I'm doing. I switched over to my burn tool, and I'm just pulling in some of those darker tones to really make the highlights stand out. And it's on a smaller brush now, but it was on a larger brush a moment ago. And you can kind of see how I'm doing that. So on and off, we make it shiny, we make it less shiny. Shiny, not as shiny. So we always like to make hair pop just a little bit, and that's a pretty good look at how we are going to be creating our imagery. Now you could go in, you could do all sorts of things if you shot it like this so that you do not have a focal depth that is going to have the black background blurred more. You can go in and you can manually do that. You can do all the things here, but I very much like this the way that it is. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And that is a really easy way to just edit this one particular photo. And then you can take a lot of those elements, especially the overall elements. If you've done overall adjustments like the brightness and contrast panels that were not relegated to just your face or just one certain area, if it was like the overall tweak, you can just pull this right out of Photoshop, take that layer and drag it onto the next photo in the same setup, and it will have the same coloring effect that you do not have to then go and learn the numbers or figure out what it is and do the sliders every single time. Just drag and drop, and it will do the overall adjustments, not the local adjustments, the little things, the spot heals and the clones and all of those. Not going to do that, but it will fix your overall coloring if it's there for the entire thing. Questions, comments on this, go ahead and drop it down below and let me know, do you want to continue to see me retouching photos as I'm doing things so that you can learn the basics of Photoshop to level up your influencer and social media marketing content? And make sure that you hit that subscribe and notification bell, because every single day we're dropping brand new videos to help you level up in the world of social media so that you can make more money online but spend less time doing it. And making sure that you are being able to get back to running your business and living your best life. We're helping you navigate the world of social platforms and how to market online while growing your online business. So we'll see you in an upcoming episode.